Welcome to everybody joining us for another LinkedIn Live session. Today we'll be talking about global rollouts of SAP S/4HANA. I'd like to welcome everybody, and it'd be great to hear from where you're from. You'll see on our chat that you can, provide comments, and feel free during the course of this initial discussion to ask your questions, because I'll be collecting and collating those as we go forward and be able to pose them to our two special guests. I'm joined today by Toni Tomic, who's a partner with the EY practice in Europe. He spent most of his career in the SAP space and over a decade at SAP in a variety of roles. As well, we have Bob Cummings, who's the CEO of LeapGreat, who spent the last 35 years in the SAP arena with 27 years at SAP in a variety of roles. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned, our topic today is global rollouts of SAP S/4HANA. But before we dig in, one thing that's kind of bothering me, Bob, you lead LeapGreat, which is automating S/4HANA transformations. And Toni, you lead a practice at EY that's doing many S/4HANA transformation. Are you guys in competition with each other? What do you think, Toni?
Ross, first of all, we have today the 3rd of October, which actually in Germany is celebrating the reunion of East and Western Germany, and it feels to me as well like a reunion here with the three of us. So not at all. We both are indeed pursuing the same goal of helping customers to successfully implement SAP, but from different and actually I would say complementary angles. EY does many SAP transformations around the world, leveraging a lot of assets, capabilities that we have in that. And LeapGreat, on the other hand, has approaches and automation technologies that remove a lot of the risk and accelerate global transformations with those programs. So both of us can help customers to have more successful projects with less risk in a shorter time. My belief, in fact, is that SAP transformations today need to be done differently than in the past, even differently than 5 years ago. We saw new technologies just recently emerging and new approaches just emerging that can help us do many implementations, but as well deliver implementations at a higher quality by putting processes in the center and bringing automation to customers, which is really key. And this is what it is all about. I mean, the LeapGreat team were highly regarded at SAP for over 3 decades, and we at EY have been very impressed by what they are doing. And this is why we actually as well started talking to each other.
Excellent. And Bob, your perspective?
Yeah, so thanks so much, Ross, for doing this. And Toni, great to see you again. It does feel like a reunion. So awesome. I guess you in Germany have a holiday for this one day. Hopefully, we should take a holiday to celebrate the work together. So we're seeing many customers nowadays that are asking, if in the age of AI, there's a more modern way to implement S/4HANA, and these customers see that the resources in the industry are really hopelessly stretched for what's about to come in the next 10 years, or let's 5 to 10 years. We will have to do as many projects as have been done in the last 50. In many by any count, there's a huge amount of resource needed, which is very sorely lacking. So just the other day, speaking to a CIO at a multinational company, who's very worried about being able to complete transformations in time, and affecting operation across the globes. And they have these 5-year projects, but often the luxury of those big, long 5-year projects is no longer really there, especially when you're looking at the timelines that we have. So his vision aligned with ours, that really you need to leverage automation and AI and different ways to try and streamline these projects. And this benefits the customer, SAP, and also the system implementers. That's why we're very happy to work together and to support the implementation team that does this. So that's where this collaboration comes from.
Well, that's good to hear. I was kind of getting a little worried that I wasn't maybe dressed properly and needed to wear a referee's uniform or something like that, and have a whistle ready to blow.
No
Again.
need. No need.
Although I am glad to hear, looking at the list of where everybody's from that's joined us today, and I know it looks like we've got quite a global group, folks from the U.S., be it, as I can see from New York City, New Jersey, even some folks from North Carolina who were thinking of you guys, especially with the recent hurricane there, and folks as far as, from India through the UK, and even somebody claiming to be right now at Oktoberfest. So we think we'd all rather be with you there as part of it. But let's, speaking on a global basis, because we're talking about global rollouts here, let's first set the stage and clarify what we're talking about today. Toni, maybe you could lead off. What exactly do we mean by global templates and rollouts?
Sure, Ross. I think especially in big companies who operate in many countries in the world, or who have many subsidiaries or or, or plants, or they often have one larger main headquarter company somewhere, which is often the focus of the first implementation. After that, in order to have consistency across the group, companies want to roll out that same system design or template to the subsidiaries. This makes operations more streamlined across the globe and drives as well efficiencies.
And what's your sort of perspective on that, Bob? Is I know that maybe before we dive into that, getting your perspective, I just want to add something to what you're talking about there, Toni. When I think about rollouts, I hear people talk about, hey, we're just going to copy and paste what we did at another, country or another plant or things like that. Is it that easy, or is there something more complex about it?
I think it sounds easy, but there are pitfalls and patterns we have seen over the years in global rollouts. The first implementation in a first entity is often a big and an exhausting project with a happy feeling at the end when it goes live. And sometimes the assumption is we now just need to copy and paste it into the countries, business segments, market units. But the subsidiary projects are often underestimated. Those are full projects in themselves covering business and IT processes. In many of those cases, I see customers that the customers only discover late what the detailed incompatibilities with the global template are, and the subsidiaries requirements might be different ones. So the sequencing of these subsidiary projects often leads to downtimes and time delays, and change management can be very challenging during these projects and rollouts in that sense.
Yeah, I know we've put up a slide here to give a bit of an illustration there. That's certainly very interesting. Do you want to maybe add to that a little bit, Bob, to give perspective there?
Yeah, sure. So, so here on the slide, as you can see there, as Toni said, sometimes these things are underestimated, or as you said, Ross, sometimes people are so happy they think, oh, you just copy and paste it into the countries now that you're finished, with a global template. And I think you see some of the key challenges. And in fact, what Toni and I have learned over the many years in our careers is that it's most often better to think globally about a transformation project rather than headquarters first and then roll out afterwards. In fact, the headquarter doesn't even always need to go first. So one recent customer we worked with is starting with a select group of subsidiaries and working their way back into the main headquarters entity, leveraging the learnings from those rollouts. And this actually has a lot of advantages, such as much better collaboration and shared learning. Sometimes when a template is simply rolled out from the center, sometimes it's often just accepted, even though it might not be optimal, and then you start to have problems down the road. So I think, and this is really key, because when you hear about all the projects that are coming up, there's also a long chain of rollouts of the implementation that's happening. So it's really key to get these things right.
Yeah, it's interesting when you were talking about how sometimes they'll start from the outside and move in. People talk about rollout, but to some extent sometimes people might be thinking about it as roll-ins as opposed to rollouts.
Yeah, that's right. In the companies we have worked with over the years, we've noticed due to globalization that subsidiaries are not really just small carbon copies of the main headquarter companies. Through globalization and specialization, group structures have become very distributed and sophisticated over the years, where subsidiaries often handle specialized parts of the value chain. So you have to view the company as a whole rather than as headquarters and subsidiaries. And I think the old pyramid structure that one knew of companies is no longer really so accurate. Therefore, a global template needs to take account of the whole company rather than just separate organizational entities.
Yeah, let's play off on and maybe drill down a little bit on that global template, because I've heard a lot of people talk about that, but can you explain what makes a global template really ready for rollout? Maybe Toni, could you comment on that?
Sure, Ross. Yeah. I mean, in fact, it is often better to design a standalone global template with a view of the global company and then decide in a second step which entities should implement in which sequence. Also, when designing a global template, it's not just about the subsidiaries today. You also want to make sure that it is flexible enough for future acquisitions. A well-designed global template should be able to stand on its own and be useful for all entities in the end. I think it's never optimal to just copy one country into another. That's really kind of the experience over those many years we saw with a lot of customers.
Okay, makes sense to me. And maybe Toni, could you expand on that a bit more? This sounds like there's these challenges there. Can you expand on what does one do to solve those challenges?
Well, Ross, what we have seen is that the challenge comes in two areas. One is in the late visibility of the real working global template system. So a lot of time is spent really on the redesign phases and discovery phases in the programs. In many cases, there's a lot of documentation, but it's not easy for the entities to visualize and test this directly into the system. Then there's the problem of sequencing the rollout implementations. It is hard to parallelize this effort so that everyone is working together on the same page and providing refinements to the solution. So the thinking here is, if one can parallelize this, you can dramatically, I think, shorten the rollout cycles. And this is what we learned LeapGreat can bring to the table.
And do you want to maybe, so Toni mentioned a bit about LeapGreat's, involvement in how to solve this challenge, Bob. Can I turn it to you to sort of maybe illustrate a little bit better how that may be done?
Yeah, so I think just picking up on what Toni said, it's really about two things I think that really make or break successful rollout projects is really firstly being able to visualize really in reality what it is. So if you're the head of a country office and you need to visualize what's happening, and then the problem is also the sequencing. You might have 30 countries that this has to go to, and usually people think in wave 1, wave 2, and whatever. And what LeapGreat provides, and thanks Ross for putting up the graphic here. We provide a kind of an approach and a platform to help this whole process. And so what we look at is we try to provide all entities with upfront visibility of the working global template system. And what we then do is we do a critical first step we call front loading, where we bring those countries. In fact, we do it in parallel. Due to automation, we're able to do it very fast, and we can do it for all of them. And then what you can see on this slide is with front load customers. So usually you have wave 1, then it's followed by wave 2, then it's followed by wave 3. But here you can see on this slide that the different waves are parallelized. To use Toni's word, is that so what we can do is they can see their working system right in the beginning. They can see the data and the processes, and they actually have the running system. And then by doing this for each of the subsidiaries or plants in the rapid succession, you can parallelize it easily. So it brings everyone together early and not only on the same page, but onto a live working system right at the beginning of the project. And then the good thing is the entities can then help each other and be involved much more, which improves the buy-in, from the customer. So if you're a wave 4 country, you often think, well, I don't have to worry about this problem for a couple of years, and then you just pay half attention, and you're not really sure how you can contribute. But here, everybody can kind of be involved and contribute and get a visibility of what's coming, and then some people can even work ahead, So on one customer case, they went from a 9-month discovery phase and 14-month implementation down to 8 months in total for the first one, and then they were able to parallelize very quickly. And the head of transformation really called the front load a game changer for how you can do global rollouts, and basically said you can already see what you get at the beginning, and you can start working with your countries, your neighboring plants and stuff, and it brings everyone together. And I think this will significantly eliminate risks during these projects, which can be very risky sometimes.
Well, that's very interesting. And, as we dig into this, I want to encourage everybody else to, ask any questions, because I'm going to keep asking the questions to both Toni and Bob, but I want to make sure that I curate the questions from the audience here. So feel free in the comments to add your questions. And it seems, it seems like a few people might be having a little technical difficulty, because of some problem with LinkedIn, but I think we've also got confirmation that others are able to see slides and the presentation. So we're going to power forward. And then I will remind everybody that we are recording this. There will be a recording as well made available afterwards, as well as we'll probably be posting highlights from the session. So if your technical difficulties, whether they be on your end or on LinkedIn, are causing that, you will have a chance to review this afterwards. But I'm wondering, as we talk about front loading and things like that, I wonder if you can make it a bit more real for the audience. Maybe Bob, or maybe I can turn to Bob. Can you go through like a real customer scenario here? Because this all looks, like a good, academic exercise, but let's maybe bring it real for the audience.
Yeah, sure. So it's, I think what really we've been seeing in these real life examples is it's more critical when it comes to rollout projects that they're done, that they're more multidimensional than a normal implementation. And the thing that we're seeing in most of these is that, there's a lot of challenges that come on the way. So one customer was really with us, and the biggest problem with global rollouts is not the technology. They can handle the technology. The real problem is really the change management. Because you're trying to not only do a project, which is very complicated on its own, but you're trying to do it across many continents, many countries, many cultures, many languages and stuff. And this goes back to the old IT framework. How do you bring your people and your process and your technology together? And it's good to have your technology in place and maybe your processes work, but unless your people adopt those, the project will fail. And this is really on recent projects what we've really not so recent project. This is an old problem, right? This goes back many years. And what we try to ensure very early in the project is that the customer can see the live working system for each process they run. With all the steps in the process, they can see all the technical details like the data, the RICEFs, the testing cycles. But most importantly is that the end user can see what roles they have, where in the process they appear, and which processes they act in. And so where they play a role. And in my experience, this is where projects struggle and also start much too late to do that. And so we believe that change management can happen actually on day one. It sounds weird, but if you have a running system, you can see what's there. You can actually start doing change management on day one. So even though it sounds crazy, but that's what automation can give us. We can automate the configuration of these systems, which means that we can rapidly and very easily generate the system,
Yeah, I'm going to sort of jump in and pose a question. One of the questions that came up from the audience, which was very pertinent here, is what sort of savings in time and cost does parallelizing the rollout generate? So is there any examples or things that you could comment of what expectations from a customer? I think it's going back to those that diagram that we had. So I don't know if Bob, you want to comment on any customer examples and how that's really helped to crush the time frame.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like where a project, sometimes the company will say, we want to do this in 5 years or we want to do this in 4 years. What we've been able to do is right off the bat, by parallelizing, you can already shorten that down by a year. And then what we try to do is, with the potential for bring everyone up, we bring like the wave 4 or the wave 3, we try to bring that forward. So when we take the project plan, we try to swallow the time cycles and then bring it back. So you can really, anywhere up from 20 to 30, 40% of the time that's there can be brought back,
Okay, excellent. And maybe just going back to the point you were finishing off with, you mentioned change management. I hear that all the time as one of the major challenges in transformation. So, can you maybe expand on that a little bit of why that's a big deal?
Yeah, because the people who will eventually be using these systems have a hard time extracting and understanding what are the areas where they're part. I mean, what is an SAP system? Or an ERP system. It's just transactions. It's reports, right? But they often don't see the processes. The processes are often in diagrams somewhere, and so often they say, "Well, which of those processes am I a part of? How do I learn what I need to do? Not just the transactions themselves, but really, how do I learn how I fit in the value chain of the company, and how do we do that very quickly right in the beginning?"
Okay, makes sense. And I'm wondering, as we look at this, my head spins a little bit. Let's maybe just drill down on benefits for a bit, because I'd like to understand this. Toni, can you really, talk about the benefits you see from this approach?
I think in general that that automation, and what we learned here is that it dramatically can reduce the risk and the effort in the projects. In some ways, I believe we are at an inflection point really in the industry. Thanks to new technology, it is becoming possible to change the way we've been doing projects for 50 years. In any case, we can't really continue doing projects the same way because, well, if you just kind of look into the market, there are not enough experts only, right? And there's a tsunami of these transformations on the horizon we see. So we need to change anyway how we work. But technology is enabling us to do this, and I think that this technology is. I mean, a lot of the people I'm talking to for projects are still thinking about, let's say, thinking about agile hybrid, but implementing in a waterfall approach. Let's say it like that. But I think through automation, we can deliver more value in less time. And I think automation is what's driving us. And automation is what allows this leveraging really the power of AI, machine learning, and those capabilities that bring us into a new era of technology. Already the past few years.
Anything to add there, Bob, of the benefits you've seen?
Yeah, I think just to add to Toni's words, I think some of the customers we see are sometimes a bit apprehensive of starting these projects. That's actually why there's such a huge backlog of transformations today, leading to the tsunami that Toni mentioned. And now with the maintenance ends approaching as long, we no longer have the luxury of those many-year rollout projects that we've known in the past. And so companies have to think about it in a different way, and they know the risks inherent to this. And so what we're trying to do, as Toni mentioned, is to take the main risks that come from the fact that a lot of stuff happens late, right? So a lot of time we work conceptually in the beginning, and then later when we're working in the reality of the system, we have time pressure, and that's where you see delays and stuff. So we're trying to make that much easier, bring the reality forward, and make it much easier, simpler, and faster. And of course, it's not just by working faster. You need technology to help you there, and that's where automation really helps us.
I think, Bob, maybe just to add one thing to that. I definitely believe that just the changes that we've seen from technology in the last 5 years and what it is enabling, in fact, to do on the project execution side, I think that's kind of what needs to be as well. There's a rethinking necessary on that, and I'm very much thinking as well that it needs to be as well part of an enablement, right, within the ecosystem, within as well the customers, on how really to do things differently in that sense.
Yeah, let me play off on some of this. We've got a couple of questions from the audience from Bill and Andreas. They're kind of a same sort of theme in that, it seems like executives today want to show huge success early in the project, and that would be as opposed to doing a lot of work to invest in a big global template up front. But how do we show success quickly? And so maybe we can kind of combine those two questions and comment on that, of how you can show executives success quickly. So I don't know, Bob, if you want to start, and then maybe add Toni, if you'd like to add in.
Yeah, great to see Andreas again after a long time. So greetings. Yeah, it's true. I mean, people think of these projects as these huge multi-year things, and you're not really very sure when you're going to actually feel the benefit of these systems. And you see the budgets, but the benefits come a lot later, and sometimes they're intrinsic benefits, right, which you can't really see so clearly. And so I think it's absolutely critical in these projects. That's where I think if one can do an exercise where you can bring some of this, firstly, if you can shave off the time already, that's already a success one can have. I think the second success you can have is if you get people rallying around really visible things where they can, even people who may never have seen SAP before and are entering one of these projects, who can now suddenly see graphically with some of all the new tools that SAP has, bringing Signavio and connecting it to the actual systems to make it so that you can actually see what's happening, and then to not wait for the whole project, but actually take it in slices. So the old saying of how do you eat an elephant? You eat it a bite at a time. So what is that bite, right? So what is the best way to cut up a project? We've seen in our work that the best way to cut it up is really by process. So a project might consist of 100 or 200 processes, and then really to try and live the success of the successful turnaround of each process as it comes along. Most of the times we do projects by work stream. Of course, you still need to do that, but if you can make touch points and milestones with the processes of the company can see it early, and all the subsidiaries can see it early. So maybe over to you, Toni, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, I think I could not have said it better, I think, Bob, but I definitely believe that that showing the process and the system early on in these programs, and as well having short timeframes when you reach the milestones of going live on certain functionalities and capabilities, and onboarding both the users that you have in headquarters that work on design and the implementation, but as well with the subsidiaries, and making this really an integrated team. I think that this is really mission critical, because what we often see is there's a template developed centrally, rolled out, and suddenly it's recognized, it doesn't really fit. But if you engage upon early, if you work with the system early, and if you use the capabilities that SAP is bringing to you today, leveraging Signavio and the connection to the business processes and the transactions behind, doing process mining, when you start the project, but as well doing process mining once you are live. So in fact, in a finance transformation, you could then say, well, where am I really losing time in this transformation, and how can I improve my fast close? I think these are things that are really being crucial. So to me, it's really upon working in this agile way and working directly with the processes and with the systems, and having less PowerPoints and Excel sheets and these type of things, but working directly with the systems and the BPM tools that are provided for that.
So I guess what I hear is that early win is kind of this early visibility of the system, where they see that versus sitting in years worth of meetings, doing PowerPoints and spreadsheets and things like that. We are at the bottom of the time frame here, so I guess I just wanted to give each of our guest speakers maybe 30 seconds to give a key takeaway, because we are in a bit of overtime right now. So maybe Toni, if you could, in 30 seconds, how would you summarize a couple of the key takeaways, and I'll pass it to Bob for his 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think we all talk about AI and automation, but rarely we see that this is applied. and how this is applied to the relevant industry, be it financial services, be it manufacturing, or others. My true belief is that AI and automation can help the customers remove the risk and effort in SAP transformation, and that this works especially for global rollouts. We believe that this is a groundbreaking approach to rolling out SAP really across the world in the end.
And Bob?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I would say, just going back to the beginning, don't underestimate global rollouts. These are projects in themselves. They can be factors more challenging than a normal implementation. But there is a better way to do these rollouts, and we've seen tremendous success through bringing the global template to life early, making it extremely visible and inclusive for all the users and business users especially, and parallelizing the rollout. And we think this reduces risk and in fact even increases the value that the customer gains on these projects from their system. And as Toni said, automation is the catalyst that allows us to do that. And yeah, so thank you very much from my side, Toni and Ross, and to everybody who joined.
Thank you so much.
So I'd like to thank our guests for joining us today. And for everybody participating, I can see from the comments there's a great discussion to be had around this global rollout topic. I'd encourage, we will be posting this video of the session live. Feel free to, make additional comments and keep the dialogue, going around this, because I think we all share in the desire to help customers really achieve their success, be it not only in rolling it out, but to do it earlier and and quicker with less risk. So once again, thank everybody for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next LinkedIn Live, which we anticipate will be coming up and posted in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.